Day. I am Derrick Day, and he is.
I am Aaron Tomlinson,
Yes,
as always.
sir. It's good to see you, man. It's been a long week, but it's
Yeah.
good to see you. Always good to see you. Always good to be here doing this with you. And before we get started, man, what's in the glass tonight?
Well, I'm just drinking Old Faithful Merlot.
Okay. And now we're on kind of the same vibe. It's a red wine vibe. Um, I'm drinking a Malbec, and I just was figuring I'd go light tonight. Not
Mhm.
really go all in. Even though I have a bottle of Hennessy, that's for later.
Yeah.
But yeah, so man, we've got a great topic tonight. I think we didn't talk about a show idea until late, um, but I was thinking about this about words,
Hmm.
about the power of words. And I think that people don't really understand the power of their words. And, there's an old saying, and I don't know if you preached this before or not, but I used to preach this all the time. I used to say, watch your thoughts because your thoughts become words. Watch your words because your words become your actions. Watch your actions because your actions become habit. Watch your habits because your habits become your character. And watch your character, excuse me, because that will become your destiny. And so that
Yeah.
was one of those good closings, when you preach a sermon and you're talking about the power of words or something like that, and it's a good
Hmm.
a, a good close. But I did a thought experiment some years back, and I asked, what is more powerful, a nuclear bomb or the word that's given to drop it?
Mm.
You know, and
Hmm.
and most people, if you give them that choice, they'll say, well, the nuclear bomb is more the more powerful of the two. But I contend that if a nuclear bomb has never been given the word to detonate, it's just a really expensive and dangerous paperweight,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So and then words have consequences. Words, you could say something, and the cascading effect of that word
Yeah.
can permeate generations, right? We think about Abraham Lincoln and the Gettysburg Address,
Hmm.
or we talk about the old myth about George Washington. I cannot tell a lie, and all of these things that these words, they permeate the generations. They have downrange and downwind consequences.
Sure.
And so, what is it about words? And one there was another one. Mike Tyson had said this too. He said that anybody that says uh, that words hurt more than physical violence, he said, has never been hit in the mouth. So words hurt, but do they really? And so these are some of the things that I wanted to explore in tonight's show. And with that, man, I'm going to kick it over to you for your thoughts.
Sure. I was trying to look up. I should have done this ahead of time, but I wasn't exactly sure the direction we were going. But there's an old story. I was going to try and find the source for it about I think it was one of the Roman emperors. Still kind of looking. Um, Here we go. You gotta love Wikipedia, man. Uh, just a second here. It was one of the pharaohs
Hmm.
in 664 who lived 664 to 610 BC, um, where he carried out a study. The idea was he wanted to find out what is humanity's natural language.
Hmm.
Apparently, not understanding how language developed back then. And so they took a group of babies and they were cared for, all their needs were cared for, but the people that were caring for them, the caretakers, were commanded not to speak any words in front of them whatsoever, because the idea was if you speak any language to them, then they won't, that natural language won't emerge on its own.
Okay.
And in the study or in the story, whether it's true or not, who knows? There've been lots of these, by the way. You can find it under Wikipedia under language deprivation experiments, where children were deprived of language. But in this particular case, every single one of the children died, even though physically they were taken care of.
Wow.
Yeah. And if you think about it, it's funny. It's funny the way I'm going to say this. If you think about it, we think in words. I mean, we think in pictures, we think in sounds, we think in impressions, and our emotions are all part of how we think. But we comment. We have a running commentary on everything.
Yeah.
And a lot of what we do in therapy, of course, I'm going to go down this route because that's my wheelhouse. But cognitive behavioral therapy is really boils down to what's the behavior of your cognitions. How are you talking to yourself about what's happening around you, about yourself, about other people? Because how you're talking is how you're framing it, how you're thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
So if we just make that little bit of a connection between the power of words and thinking, the two cannot have one without the other. You can't speak without thinking, but you can't think without language, or it's difficult to, right?
Yep.
So I guess that's where I'd kick it off. Like, I think words are so powerful because words program us. Think about the words that you heard as a child that impacted your life. That either, if a child grows up hearing a bunch of negative words, they're not going to have a healthy sense of self, and that's going to impact them throughout their lives. Or you can take someone who grew up in a toxic environment, shaming environment, and they had a teacher, they had a coach, they had a mentor, they had somebody that said something to them, and they held on to those words, and those words empowered them to, it could be something as simple as you're smarter than you think, or you're going to write the next great American novel, or something that gives that little bit of affirmation that comes by words, right? Yep. That then empowers a person to overcome their circumstances or completely changes the course of their lives. How many times have we rethought something because somebody just said something to us in casual conversation, and those words reframed something for us and gave us encouragement or affirmation or the power to go forward? Or on the reverse side of that, you ought not, have you thought about this? Or, kind of some shaming or self-doubt words that then we take into ourselves that probably agrees with all the negativity that's going on in our self-talk anyway. It's an interesting study, man. Like, I can't remember what it is. I think like something like how many thousands of words a minute. And for most people, 90% of that is negative. And so we wonder why we have these limitations, right? Like a lot of our limitations are based on beliefs that we received or internalized sometimes just based on words and no grounding in reality whatsoever. So the effect of words upon a human being, I would disagree with Mike Tyson. My nose will heal, my jaw will heal, hopefully. Maybe not if I got hit by him. You know what I'm saying? Bruises will heal, cuts will heal. I think it's the exact opposite. I think it's a good thing to teach your kids, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me, as a way of saying, don't give so much significance to negative words when they're spoken to you. But at the end of the day, words can destroy our lives.
Yep, absolutely. And this, you were talking about things that like adults say to you, and one of the things you said, you're going to write the great American novel. And my English teacher, Mrs. Morency, in my senior year in high school, she told me exactly that. And
I must have remembered that subconsciously.
Oh, maybe, but still, people say things to you. And then I had people, and there were family members, Aaron, that told me that I was never going to amount to anything. They said, you ain't shit. You're never going to be shit, kind of thing, right? And that kind of stuck with me, but it fueled my ambition, and it made me want to prove them wrong, and so I spent a good portion of my adult life working out those words in my life, and saying, you know something, this is not going to be my destiny. This is not going to be my fate. This is not how I'm going to wind up. And so I worked hard to prove them wrong, and I did. And yeah, I'm not the I haven't always been the kind, gentle person that I am now. Um, I talk about my alter ego is Throat Punch Derrick, and Throat Punch Derrick was something else. But my thing was that when I succeeded, I rubbed their face in it. you know, yeah, you thought you were going to have some power over me, but and so with that being said, I'm going to share my favorite word,
Okay.
and that word is fuckery. It's like whenever I think of the word fuckery, it makes me laugh. And here's the I pulled up the definition of it. It says fuckery. It's a noun and it's slang, vulgar. It says behavior, circumstances, situations, etc., that are nonsensical, foolish, or contemptible, or sexual intercourse. Which that was a new one to me because I
Yeah.
didn't think that fuckery had anything to do with actual fucking, but
Right.
here we are.
Right. You know what? I remember. So the reason I was researching this years ago, 12 years ago to be exact, um, one of my children, we recognized at a month old had significant hearing loss, and we didn't know the extent of it or what we were dealing with. And so I did some research, as I do on everything that's important to me in my life. Actual research, though, by the way, like my scholarly search wasn't Google
Right.
or YouTube search engine, which is always so
Real,
ironic.
real research, real scientific
Yeah,
research.
real research. Is it better? So here's the question for you: is it better to be born blind or deaf? Did you know there's an answer to that question?
I would say that it's better to be born blind
That's exactly right.
because if you're born blind, you still have language and the ability to use words. But if
Yeah,
you're born deaf, then you have to figure out a way around the whole word paradigm, and how you were thinking that we think in words.
yeah, and that's exactly what the study showed. That I know there's exceptions, but as a general rule, uh, people who are born deaf never develop cognitively to the degree of someone who's born blind. And
Wow.
that makes sense because our cognitions, our words, our language is intimately connected to our cognitions. So there's cognitive decline or cognitive impairment from the beginning if you're born deaf that you won't experience if you're born blind. Isn't that interesting?
That is very interesting.
And yeah, one other thing, just real quick about the power of words with fuckery. The other thing I was thinking about in preparation for the show was words create feelings.
Uh-huh.
So you say every time I hear the word fuckery, I laugh.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing about the power of words, They create feelings.
Well, it's like words can be highly nuanced too, right? Now, this was something that I learned when I was doing Bible study, that when you're studying the Koine Greek, that a single word can have multiple meanings. It can
Right.
have two meanings or it can have 10 meanings. And so when you're actually parsing scripture, you have to read it in the original language, and then you have to every action word, every verb, every noun, that basically you have to parse that text with every possible definition of that word in order to find out what the word or what the passage of scripture really means in context, right?
Hmm.
And so that's helped me uh, in just language in general, because you'll hear something like I'm going to use another word that I like a lot, and that's motherfucker.
Now, there's that theme here.
And there's a theme. But when you say motherfucker, you can say that's a motherfucker, and you say that's incredible, or you can say that motherfucker really pissed me off,
Yeah.
and so it's a negative, right? Or you can say, I can say, man, Aaron Tomlinson is my motherfucker, right? And that's a positive, right? And so there's so many different nuances to that one word.
Yeah.
And the point that I'm getting at is that a lot of times when we think about words, we think about the words that we use. We don't really think about all of the possible definitions,
Right.
all of the possible connotations and denotations of a word. And so when you do that, I think that there are a lot of times where people say things that they don't really mean, and it's not like they're saying something accidentally or they're saying something haphazard. They're saying something they don't understand because they've never been taught the nuances of the words.
Hmm.
And so it's funny, right? You know, we lose nuance and we lose meaning, and I think that this is really important because like one of the things we used to teach this also, and I know you and I were there in terms of preaching, right? The power of words, right? You know, that you speak things that are not as though they were,
Hmm.
right? So you're talking about manifesting,
Hmm.
manifesting. So if you're speaking something in the wrong context, how can you manifest the result that you want if you don't really understand the meaning of the word in context? Then you can't manifest what you want, and that's why you know, understanding word definition, word usage, words in context, all of that's very important. And I think that we lose that. And I also think that, you know, when we were growing up, you and I,
Hmm.
um, you know, I think that we had a better understanding of word usage than people in the current
For
generation.
sure.
And so I think that, you know, sometimes things are lost in translation because the understanding of correct word usage or understanding the nuances of words, they don't have that now. It's like basically things have gotten very binary when it comes to linguistics. You know, it means this or it means that, or it means this or it doesn't mean that. And um, so I want to talk about that for a minute. I want to talk about the you know, the nuances of words,
Hmm.
and you know, just I want to kind of pick your brain on that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so if we presuppose, I mean, there's lots of directions to go there. If we presuppose words have power, and then we want to increase our personal power, then increasing our vocabulary might behoove us.
Yeah, that's a great word, behoove. I like that.
Because and you know, it's interesting to watch. One of the things I've noticed working with the younger generation as they're coming up that came up in the digital age, digital communication, I think it's changed the world, and I don't know what it's going to be like in 10 years for that generation, because they are lacking a large buffet of ways to express themselves, because we express ourselves through memes and emojis and
Yeah.
gifs, and you know what I mean.
Yep.
And this generation for sure would rather text than call and have a conversation. And so I don't know, you know, communication's changing, the language is becoming more digital, the communication platforms are more digital. You and I are best of friends. We've never actually met in person. You know,
Yep.
it's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
So I think there is that side to it. I think also the power to have influence is connected to language, and that goes with the nuancing of it. So I can say something to someone. There's 1,000 different ways you can say something, whether you want to encourage, whether you want to say I love you, whether you
Mhm.
want to say you're important to me, or whether you want to bring correction, or you want to bring, here's one that I still get triggered on, word that I still get triggered on, rebuke,
Ooh. Yeah.
because of the way it was used in religion, right?
Sure.
But rebuke is not a bad thing, but it carries so much shame content
Hmm.
in those religious contexts. And so let's say you want to speak counsel to someone. If you think about the nuances and you've got ways to say it, you know, you can think through what is the best way for me to say this to this person. And then if we realize words create feelings,
Hmm.
then, you know, I've got to realize that I can say the same thing in a important relationship with an important person about an important topic, if I'm too blunt, I'm going to create negative feelings for that person, and I'm going to create problems for myself that I don't need. If
Yeah.
I'm a little more eloquent and I'm aware of the fact that words create feelings, I can say it in a more sophisticated way, right?
Yeah.
And I have a better chance of influencing the outcome in that situation. So this comes into play in relationships. This comes into negotiations. This comes to play into play with job interviews.
Yep.
Um, all of this stuff is connected to the ability to nuance and having a understanding of language, and also having a enriched vocabulary at your
Sure.
disposal. I think it's so important.
Yeah. And, and I think that you brought up a really good point there, that the richer your vocabulary, I think the more opportunities it creates in life.
Hmm.
Because the richer your vocabulary is, the more people you can speak to, the broader your audience can become, or the more focused your audience can become based
Hmm.
on how you use words. But I wanted to use something. So Maya and I were talking about this, and we were talking about like how we manifested each other. You
Okay.
know that there was something about, like, okay, we each decided independently that we wanted to be with someone who would love us a certain way, who would be connected to us in a certain way, and would be invested in our lives a certain way. And I really believe that if you don't really understand the nuances of the words, you could be expecting a manifestation of something, and it doesn't come, and then you're disappointed because you're saying, okay, well, somebody told me about word power. Somebody told me that if I believe this, and I speak it as if it were, then it's coming to pass. But you speak it without the confidence in knowing what the actual definition in the context of what you're expecting.
Hmm.
So you wind up speaking a word that's out of context, and it doesn't produce the manifestation. Now, so watch this. This is something you and I have talked about, that and in terms of spirituality, right?
Hmm.
That there are manifestations that have come in our lives, right?
Hmm.
That
Yeah.
they defy logic, they defy reason, they defy and they defy the tangible, measurable, repeatable metric that I frequently use, but they happen.
Hmm.
So the thing is that, okay, what caused the manifestation? And so we've talked about different things. We've talked about the power of agreement, right? We've talked about the law of attraction. We've talked about the power of the words themselves. That when you use a word in conjunction with a particular situation, that you produce some kind of result. So the thing that I'm getting at is, there are people out here, they're believing for a job. They're believing for a relationship. They're believing for healing. They're believing for a financial miracle, and then it doesn't happen,
Right.
and then they get blown out of their beliefs, or they become disillusioned, or they become they develop a disbelief in themselves,
Hmm.
right?
Yep. Yep.
And so that's why I think that talking about the power of words is so important, because if you're believing for something, or
Hmm.
you have an expectation for something, then you need to make sure that you have the proper context as you're using the words. Because if you don't have the proper context, or the proper nuance, the proper connotation or denotation of the word or words that you're using, how can you expect a result? And so this gets me back to something else, right? Like, so we talk about, again, the power, the law of attraction, the power of agreement, things like that. If if I'm saying, if two people are saying the same word, but they don't have the same understanding of the word, can there be agreement? And so again, we look at, okay, why did this thing happen in this situation, and not in that situation. And I think that it's because we don't really understand the word usage, relative to each situation.
Yep. I I agree with you 100%. Gosh, there's so much there. I'm reading a book right now called The Source, and it's written by what's this lady's name? Hold on. Tara Swart, who is a medical doctor, and she has a PhD in neuroscience. And it's called The Source. And the subtitle is The Secrets of the Universe and the Science of the Brain.
Huh.
You'd love it. But she really approaches this whole concept of the law of attraction from a neuroscience perspective, about how we program ourselves to receive, or we program ourselves to progress,
Yeah.
or we program ourselves to manifest. So I'm only on chapter 2, but she demystifies it, at least in the first couple chapters. I don't know what the rest of the book is like, obviously.
Yeah.
That really needed to be said, didn't it?
But you can nuance that, Aaron.
I could nuance that, yeah. That was my way of putting a disclaimer out there if somebody gets the book and it sucks. How's that for nuancing it?
Yeah, well, let me just say this: that if Aaron recommends a book, the book doesn't suck. It just doesn't. That's that. But continue on.
But and this is how so the way she's looking at it is like we program ourselves for success, right? With the way we think, the way we visualize, the way we talk to ourselves, the way we talk about things. And she talks about the limitations of attention, that we cannot pay attention to everything that's going on in our lives. And if we are programmed negatively, in other words, if we're speaking negatively to ourselves constantly, or we're speaking negatively about the world constantly, or we're speaking negatively about situations constantly, then we are telling our brains to only allow in negative information, because this is what we believe about the world. If we program ourselves in a different direction towards our future, then our brains, this is just neuroscience, will start paying attention to opportunities, and we'll be able to take advantage of those opportunities because we'll actually see and notice the opportunity when it presents itself to us. So it's a fascinating concept to think about. You can only focus on like 7 to 9 things at a time, or not 7 to 9, 5 to 9 things at a time, depending on where your attention, where you're at in the, if you're neurotypical or neurodivergent. If you're neurodivergent, you can focus on even less, Yep. And so we program ourselves with words on what we're going to focus on. And if we're focusing on the negative because we're constantly speaking negatively, then we're going to direct our life. It's not that much different than what James said. I'm sure you preached this a few times. And was it James chapter 1 or James chapter 3? I think it's James chapter 3, where it talks about the tongue being the rudder on the boat, or the tongue being the bit in the horse's mouth that guides and directs the life. It's because of the way we program ourselves. So here's what I would say for people that say, how come it works sometimes and how come it doesn't work other times? I know in my own life, and this may only be true for me, but I've come to the place where when it works, there is a congruency of programming within me that it's going to happen. So in that sense, I do think we're creating, to some extent, our own reality. I don't buy into this crap that, if bad things happen to you, it's because you brought it on yourself, or whatever. Ellen and I talked on Sunday on my Sunday morning broadcast about, we made some soul contract with somebody to be a dick to us so we could learn something, before we came in the Bible. I don't believe in any of that crap. But I do believe that we can create a reality for ourselves based on how we program ourselves. And that requires that we not only talk in a way that it's occurring or has occurred, but that we think in a way that it's occurring or has occurred. We imagine in a way that it's occurring or that it has occurred. We feel in a way that it is occurring or that it has occurred. And I can tell you, when I've been that congruent, everything I think, everything I say, everything I feel, everything I'm imagining, and the actions that I'm taking are working towards this outcome, I would dare to say maybe 100% of the time that outcome took place. So now
Yeah.
I know when I'm not going to manifest something because I know there's part of me that doesn't really want it. That's
Right.
why when I teach on the law of attraction, I'll spend a ton of time with people, or if I'm coaching someone,
Uh-huh.
I'll spend a ton of time with people on what do you really want?
Yeah.
Because if you're not sold out to this 100%, you're not going to get it.
Yep.
And you may not, you may want it over here, but you may not realize how destabilizing that's going to be to the rest of your life.
Yeah.
I worked with a couple people recently, and I got to be careful. I wish I could share examples, but I can't. But I worked with a couple people recently. We're just reframing one or two issues for them. And by reframing, what I mean is talking about it differently. It means something different to you. Words are about meaning, right? So framing is about meaning. The way I talk about this tells you the meaning that I give to something, right? So
Yep.
when you reframe something, you change the meaning. And there was a couple people recently that I worked with that had profound changes of meaning about a circumstance in their life. And when I talked to one of the individuals later, it was almost like the person was saying, I don't know how to be in the world now. Like my whole sense of
Mm.
self was programmed around this meaning. So the way that I interacted with people and the way I thought about my future and the way I thought about my job opportunities and the way I thought about all of it it's not there now. And I'm having an elevated level of anxiety because I don't know how to be now. That's the power of words,
Yeah.
power of meaning, which is expressed in words.
Yeah. And that's interesting, right? Because what you're touching on something really, really key here is that our words determine our being. And if so this is the thing I always talk about, coming back to core values, right? Coming back to what it is that is the center of your belief, the center of your understanding. And if you don't have that, then your being, basically what you said, you could believe for something without understanding how possibly destabilizing, or disruptive this may be to your life, right?
Mm,
So if you're believing something that's contrary to your being, okay, let's say in a best case scenario it doesn't happen. Best case scenario. Worst case scenario, it does happen, but it totally fucks your life up.
right.
And I was just talking. Maya said her favorite word is skullduggery.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's actually a good one. I like skullduggery, and we had a talk about that early in our relationship where we were talking. I said something about skullduggery, and she said that's my favorite word.
Oh, that's great. It's so interesting.
But so I put something else up here. There's a book. It's called
Yeah.
Neural Wisdom, and this is a book that man, this book changed my life. But the subtitle of it is The New Brain Science of Money, Happiness, and Success. And so the whole purpose, the whole point behind neural wisdom is retraining your brain to think differently so that you speak differently. And
Hmm.
and I was thinking about this, like um, there's an architectural company based in Chicago called Sizemore and Associates, and Sizemore and Associates has the distinction of being the architect of really large skyscrapers, right? That they designed the what used to be called the Sears Tower in Chicago, which is now called the Willis Tower. They designed Taipei 101. They designed the Petronas Towers, and they designed the Burj Khalifa, which is the tallest building in the world. And now they've partnered with Saudi Arabia and designed the Kingdom Tower, which is supposed to be even taller than the Burj Khalifa. It's supposed to be a complete mile high, right?
Wow.
Now,
Yeah.
here's the point about this is that somebody had this thought
Hmm.
of what the thought of a super tall building, a
Hmm.
super skyscraper, and then and the story is about the Burj Khalifa is that it began life as on a cocktail napkin.
Wow.
this guy begins sketching it out on a cocktail napkin, and then he begins talking about it, and the talking about it creates a chain reaction of events that cascades in or culminates in the building of the building.
Mhm.
What am I saying is that, so like going back to what you said earlier, we think in words, right? Words create pictures, words create framework, words are containers that deliver something from the abstract to the concrete,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So when we understand the power of words, we understand the words are containers, and we begin to take our words and use them to create situations, circumstances, and even things in our lives that become life changing, right? But again, going back to what you were saying about to your being, if you're creating these containers that are not aligned with your core values, you could wind up speaking something or manifesting something that is the antithesis of your core values. And then guess what? Now your life is in complete disarray because something has entered into your life. You've manifested this, right? But is it the thing that you wanted that was going to propel your life, to accelerate your life, and you find out now this is something that harms your life, hinders your life, stagnates your life, right?
Hmm.
So anyway, I'm just thinking about this because I really, what I want everybody who's watching us to understand is that each of us, we have the complete power and authority to shape our destiny. See, and understand this. I want everybody to understand is that there are situations and circumstances that happen to you that are completely out of your control.
Right.
You can't do anything about those. But what you can do is you could create thoughts and words which result in manifestations as to how you react to those situations. And the 90-10 rule is that life is, you know, 10% of what happens to you and 90% of how you react to it,
Mhm.
right? So what are your thoughts, and what are the words that you're generating? And again, to tie this all together, the words that you're generating are the words that you're generating, are they in proper context? Do
Mhm.
they have the correct nuance? Because if they don't, what happens is you speak this and you say, okay, I know the law of attraction works. I know that speaking things that are not as though they were, that it works. But I'm speaking it and it's not working. Well, why isn't it working? Well, because you haven't nuanced it. You haven't aligned it with your core values. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. And that's where I was going with this whole subject.
Yeah. Yeah. And so again, just thinking about this, like words create feelings.
Yep.
Just like you said, fuckery.
Yep.
I get a laugh every time I hear that word. We wouldn't even be able to have a favorite word if we didn't have feelings attached to words, right? So a lot of the negative emotions or states that we are creating internally for ourselves is the byproduct of the way that we're talking to ourselves.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite things to do with clients is ask them, like tapping into, what are the negative things that you say about yourself? And it's so funny how they first present it so politely, like well, like I'm trying to think of an example. Well, I think I just, I sit there and tell myself maybe I'm not as smart as the next person, or
Mm.
maybe I um it's like a polite conversation. Nobody's
Yeah.
negative self-talk is polite conversation. Your negative self-talk is I'm a piece of shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a motherfucker. Like, like we're
Not in
talking.
a positive connotation, because I'll say this all the time, man. I'm a motherfucker for real.
Yeah, yeah, not in a
But I'm
positive.
speaking, I'm speaking positively to myself.
Right. So I will frequently tell them, wow, your self-talk is a whole lot more, your negative self-talk is a whole lot more polite to you than mine is,
Mm,
to try to get
wow.
to the core of it. But you're creating feelings with the way you're talking to yourself, about your situation, about your life. And that's creating a certain state for you. And then
Yeah.
that state becomes part of your, what I would call aura, your energy field that surrounds you. And people pick up on that.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
how many times people told you, I like your energy, or I like the energy that this person brings, or
Yeah.
this person said this, but something was just off with it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Like they were talking great and it was supposed to be encouraging, but it didn't feel encouraging because their aura was, their energy
Yeah.
centers were out of whack. Well, then you know that regardless of what they're saying, internally something else is going on, something else is happening in there for that person, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes there's nothing more powerful than just changing that stuff, changing the way you talk, changing the way you talk to yourself. And it's hard to catch all your thoughts, and you can't, like, you're gonna have negative thoughts. It's just,
Yep.
Jesus said the poor you'll always have with you.
Yeah. Which is a fucked up thought.
But in reality, negative thoughts you're always gonna have with you. But what do you choose to emphasize and focus on, and how do you choose to express that? And so one of the most basic and powerful ways to change your life is to pay attention to how you talk and how you
Yep.
talk about situations. Now, I'm not getting into the hyper faith thing where, you know, somebody comes in on oxygen or wheelchair to a healing service
Mhm.
and you do an altar call for healing and nobody would come forward because nobody wants to admit they're sick. There's power in expressing negativity. There's power in, I love that you're somebody I can call up if I've had a bad day or whatever I'm dealing with the situation and just say,
Yep.
this sucks and I feel like shit and I can't believe this person did this and that and the other thing, right?
Yep.
um, so I'm not saying it's an all or nothing thing, but if your general way you are speaking about yourself and about life is negative, there's no way you can feel good.
Yeah.
There's just no way you can
Oh,
do every kind of thing in the world, all kinds of shadow work and whatever. But if you don't start changing the way you're speaking, nothing good's going to happen.
you know what? I did a show on Sunday,
Uh-huh.
and I called it "Thinking About Thinking," and somebody gave it an actual word for it, metacognition.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
and I want to talk about that for a minute because I think that a lot of times we don't think about what we're thinking, right? And so one of the things that I always do, this is an exercise that I engage in. I always see if my work, if my thoughts align with my core values, and 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 if my thoughts don't align with my core values, I'm careful not to speak it.
Mhm.
I let it sit in my head. And this is what, like, going back to what the Bible says about bringing every thought into captivity, right? You have to actually learn to arrest your thoughts, learn to really think about what you're thinking about, because a lot of times, we think about things and we worry, right? And so what they say, worry is robbing the future, you
Yeah.
know and so I don't want to create a situation where I'm worrying. So if I have this thought, I say, okay, does this thought line up with my core values? Does do I think that this thought is this thought going to liberate me, or is it going to ensnare me? Is this thought going to bring forth a manifestation of something good, or is this going to bring forth the manifestation of something that I don't want? And so I have an exercise that I go through, that when a thought pops in my head, because what one of the things that I tell people is, you can't control your thoughts. You can't control your thoughts, but you can control your reaction to your thoughts. And so sometimes, you have a thought, well, I think my wife is going to cheat on me, or I think that my boss is going to fire me, or I think, and you come up with all these different things. And and if you let that thought begin to produce words, it'll produce containers that they will beg to be filled, right? So in other words, you can have like a negative reality in your mind, and by speaking it, you create a container that's going to be filled. And every word that you speak is a container that is going to be filled with something.
Mhm.
So, do you want it filled with good, or do you want it filled with something that is disruptive, or that's dangerous to you? So, what I the thing that I would say to everybody that's watching is get a grip on your thoughts. You know, align your thoughts with your core values. Align your thoughts with what you want to manifest. And if the thought does not align with your core values, if it doesn't align with what you're hoping to manifest, then you take that thought and you arrest it. You say, okay, I'm going to put this thought on the shelf. I recognize that it's there. It popped up. I can't make it go, I can't magically make it go away, but I can say I'm not going to give it any more life than it deserves. So I put it on the shelf and I say, okay, this is a thought that I don't need to assign any action to, right? I don't need to create a container with my words that will give this thought power. So anyway,
Yeah, one of my early mentors in life was one of the thought leaders and really one of the developers of neurolinguistic programming, and brilliant, has written prolifically on the brain and language and neurolinguistic programming and how to use it and that kind of stuff. And but he would boil it down to life is as simple as this. I remember him saying this. Life is as simple as this. It's being able to say yes to the things that you want and no to the things that you don't want. And when you're younger, especially, and you're talking, you're sitting at the feet of someone that is
yeah,
a world leader, a world thought leader in an area of study that you want to learn and grasp. You're like, no, come on, give me something meatier, give me something deeper. But I just heard those words again with what you were saying. Um, the way the way you were nuancing that and laying that out. If I had to sum that up, it's life is as simple as learning how to say yes to the things you want and no to the things that you don't want. And that's what you're talking about, aligning your
exactly.
thoughts, aligning your actions, aligning your words with what you really value. Well, what are values? It's what I want,
Yeah,
or it reflects what I don't want. And so many times we get so mixed up inside ourselves that we can even end up saying no to the things we want for God knows what reason
yeah,
because of thoughts, right?
yeah,
And then we say yes to the things that we don't want, or we're not congruently saying yes to the things that we want and congruently saying no to the things that we don't want. And so I think that's where it has to begin. Like if for people listening, if you want to change your life, one of the best exercises you could do is just, what do I want? Ask yourself seriously that
yeah,
question. And a lot of people, surprisingly, Derrick, just from years of coaching, they can't really honestly answer that question because
yeah,
they've either been so beat up by life, or they're so caught up in the rat race of doing the things that I have to do, that I need to do, that I don't have time to think about the things that I want to do, and they don't initially have an answer to that question. So I think, to sum it up, or to make it simple for people, figure out how to say yes to the things you want
yep,
and how to say no to the things you don't want.
yep. Well, I want to go back to something you said before, is that people don't understand what they really want. And and this is key, because if you don't really know what you want, if you haven't settled in your mind about what you want, how can you create a manifestation that aligns with that? How can you create a thought, or and watch this. Here's the thing. There are two kinds of thoughts, right? There are autonomous thoughts,
Right.
thoughts that just pop up in your head, and,
Right.
and you have no control over those. But what you do have control over are conscious thoughts.
Yep.
So the conscious thought, now you say, okay, I'm going to deliberately or intentionally think about this thing, right? Now, again, going back to what you said about understanding what you want, I think that the reason why manifestation is like all over the place, and getting back to what you said, is simply because people don't know what they want. Now, if you know what you want, and you say, I'm going to focus on this, right? That's like, you know, uh, I always look at like Larry Bird, NBA superstar, Hall of Famer, right? I look at Larry Bird as not the guy that was the most talented. I think that he's the guy that he had a dream and he put in the work. He focused his thoughts toward a goal. And he said that this goal is going to produce something in my life. So you may not be the most talented person. You may not be the most talented singer or okay, let me give you an example. A real world contemporary example, right? Lady Gaga. Lady Gaga is talented, but I don't think that she's head and shoulders talented over a lot of the other people in her field.
Yeah, for sure.
But what she is focused. She's focused. She has developed her identity, her persona,
Yeah.
her style, and everything that she does aligns with that. So and I've seen her like they've shown her like playing multiple musical instruments, playing the piano, playing the guitar, playing drums, whatever, right? So you have this ability to do these multiple things, but they're not, she's not the best at any of those, right? So and then let me use another example. You look at Prince, right? Prince played the guitar, played the keyboards, played the drums. He played like 13
Ridiculously
instruments, right?
talented.
And and here's the thing that somebody had asked Eric Clapton. They said, how does it feel to be the world's greatest guitarist?" And Eric Clapton's response was, "I don't know, ask Prince."
Mm,
You know, in other words, Prince may not have been the most talented, but what he was focused.
mm,
He was focused. He knew exactly what he wanted, and he knew exactly how he wanted to achieve how he wanted to achieve it, and he knew exactly what he wanted his success to look like.
mm.
So he created that. And that's what I'm saying to everybody that's watching is that you have the ability to create your own destiny, to create your own success. But the first thing that you have to do, if you first thing, most people don't know what their own core values are.
Right.
So they don't know what their why is. And if you don't know what your why is, how can you attach your thoughts, hitch your thoughts to the wagon of your thoughts to the star of your why, right? So you don't do that. And now what you start saying is, okay, I want to manifest, so I'm going to start creating words that are containers that are supposed to fulfill this destiny, but they don't because everything is out of alignment. And so I'm learning in real time here as I'm talking. I'm getting some stuff, and I'm looking at my own life, and I'm like, okay, what I need let me just say me. What I need to do is I need to make sure that my thoughts are aligned with my core values, and that my words are aligned with the thoughts that are aligned with my core values. Now I'm creating containers for what it is that I want. And the other thing is that I talk about what I want, but I talk about what I want in a very nebulous sense. I don't get very specific. So
Right.
now I realize again, based on this conversation, that I need to get my words together, my thoughts together, my core values together, so that when I begin to speak and I create these containers, that these containers they're going to produce specific results aligned with the manifestation that I expect based on my core values and my thoughts toward. In other words, it's time to get focused.
Yeah. No, I love that. And it's true. I mean, that goes back to what you were saying about being nuanced and in context and stuff, right? Because we
Yep.
think we think in words, or to the degree that we do think in words, we we often generalize. The brain's lazy. It's just easy to generalize. I want to be happy. Well, what the hell does that mean? Or Christians. I used to love those Christians. I just want God to bless me. I
Yeah.
just want to be blessed. Well, what the hell does that mean? What does that even look like? That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And so it's funny you mentioned Larry Bird. I was just thinking, um, that dude was like Mike Tyson on the basketball court. I
Yeah.
mean, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Just clearly not the most. I mean, you think about him and Magic, right? In the same sentence. I think Magic
Yep.
was far more talented. And I'm not saying
Exactly.
Magic wasn't focused, but Larry
Yeah.
just had an attitude and an energy that he brought to every play.
Yep.
And that's the result, I have to believe, of the way he thought about it, the way he was talking to
Yep.
himself, the way he was very aligned, like you said, focused, very aligned with his core values. Peyton Manning's another one that I think about. Like
Yeah.
most athletes, former football players that go into the media, they end up on sports talk shows or something if they're doing something, unless they're, just calling games for the NFL or something. But you think about like all these guys that are on First Take or, I'm with Stephen A. Smith or these shows that were former football players. They got to learn about basketball. They got to learn about baseball. They got to, probably able to talk about the Olympics, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Peyton Manning, everything he does, he and his brothers starting their own production company, but everything they do throughout the year is based on football.
It's based on football,
And
and
they're
they're geniuses at that one thing.
Yeah. Because that's what they love, obviously, clearly. Nothing takes away from that, right? So one thing I would say about clarifying values, because that can be hard, knowing your why, clarifying your values. One of the things that you can do is to get down to your core values is you can think about something that you want. So I want more money. All right. So on its face, it appears that I'm valuing money, but I have to ask myself the question, what is that money going to allow me to do that's even more important to me than the money itself?
Exactly.
And for me right now, to answer that question, and these can change, but for me to answer that question right now, what that's going to do for me is give me more time.
Yep.
So time is what's more important than money. Okay, Aaron, if you have more time, what is time going to give you or allow you to do that's even more important than the time itself? And honestly, if I answer that honestly, transparently tonight, with vulnerability,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be able to relax. Like the first thing I think about is I'm going to take my family on more vacations.
Yeah.
Well, what's the vacations going to give you that's even more important? It's going to allow me to relax, to not be so geared up all the time because I'm thinking about the next thing that's going to bring more money in, right?
Yep.
You can think about other things. Okay, what's the vacation going to give you that's even more important? Time and memories with my family, creating.
Exactly.
Okay, so family now is more important, right? And what's more important to you than family? The giving and sharing of love, right?
Yep.
So at the end of the day, I'm chasing money, but what I really want is time to create valuable memories and loving memories with my family. So that's my real value. That's my real why. Like I don't ever think about, I want to impress the neighbors. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but there's even something behind that, right? Like why,
Yep.
what will you get if you impress the neighbors? Or I'm not thinking, because I'm not into cars like you are, it's just never been my thing. So as long as it gets me from point A to point B, I'm happy. As long as it's reliable transportation, I don't care.
But you have a cool car, so
Well, yeah, but you get the point. It's like I don't need that. So that's not even on my radar. So that's how somebody, start with the basic thing that you think you want, and then think to yourself, if I had that, what is that going to give me that's even more important than the thing that I think I want?
yeah.
And keep chunking your way up or doing the metacognitions all the way up until you find what really gets you right here.
You used one of my favorite words too. That's chunking. Yeah, I'm putting that on the screen because, if you start thinking about things in chunks, right? Here's the thing: we always think of things as like all or nothing, right? As a
Mhm.
concept, all or nothing. It's all of this or it's none of this, right? But if you start thinking about chunking, you're saying, okay, what does a chunk of this thing look like? Okay, so let me accomplish this chunk and then move on to the next chunk. Now, if I accomplish the next chunk, okay, great. But if I don't, okay, that's cool too because I did accomplish this one chunk and I can say, okay, I can move on to the next one. So one of the things in that book, Neural Wisdom, that I have put up in the chat, that it began with a thought experiment. What would you rather be, the happiest person in the world or the wealthiest person in the world? And almost instinctively, intuitively, that most people say they want to be the happiest person in the world. But if you were the wealthiest person in the world, think of all the things that you could do with that wealth and how that would tie to your happiness. And the point that they were getting at, and they came up with some scientific data that says that money does indeed buy happiness.
Mm,
And that was a life-changing thing for me, because I always said money doesn't buy happiness. Money buys time, which will give you happiness. Money buys things that could give you happiness. Money buys freedom that gives you happiness. But no, the money itself, the money itself, the money itself allows you to buy the things, or to afford the things
right.
that make you happy. So
Right.
what I'm getting at, and here's the thing that what I'm not saying, right? Because I tell people all the time, I've been very successful in chasing money.
Hmm.
In my career, whenever I look at what is the next big thing, and I learn that, and that allows me to propel my career to the next level, and then I make X amount more money, right? And so you know exactly how much money I make. I've told you exactly how much money I make. Everybody doesn't need to know that, but what I will say is that um, the thing about money, you could chase money for the sake of money, but what happens is that you're sacrificing some other things along the way. Now, so that sounds counterintuitive to what neural wisdom is saying, is that money does buy happiness, but what I'm saying to everybody watching is, don't get caught up in the pursuit of money. Think of money as a tool. Money is a means to an end. It's not an end to itself, right? So if you think of money, money buys time to take off and take more vacations. Money buys the ability to take more vacations that allow me to build memories with my family. Money buys the time that I need to give my wife the attention and the love that she deserves, and all of these different things, right? But the thing is that in all of those circumstances, we're not focusing on the money. We're focusing on what it is that we're trying to do. So the other thing too is that when you align what it is that you do for a living, or what you do for money, with what your core values are, basically what happens then is work ceases to be work.
Right.
It
Yeah.
just becomes a means by which you're producing income, but you're doing what you love. And so this is something you and I have talked about a lot, that okay, if given complete freedom, what would you do?
Hmm.
If money were no object, what would you do for a living? What would you do as something that's a value add to society? And most people would do something different than what it is that they're doing for a living.
Hmm.
So the other thing that I'm trying to pass on to our audience tonight is, like, don't let money be your ruler.
Right.
Money is great, but don't serve money. Let money serve you. Money is a tool, and a tool is not intended to be your master. A tool is intended to be your servant,
Hmm.
right? So
Hmm.
make money your servant. And what I'm saying is that follow your dreams. Follow what it is that resonates with your core values. Follow what it is that you think that this will be a positive impact to your life, that will not be disruptive, that will not be deleterious to your life, but it will actually help you. So that's the thing that's I'm kind of rambling now, but that's kind of where I am.
Yeah. So, like, part of what you're saying, like, work won't be work to you anymore. it Aligning your core values and aligning your vision, words, actions with your core values empowers you to embrace the suck, is how I would say it.
Yeah, that's what David Goggins says.
Yeah.
He said you have to learn to embrace the suck, and that's let me just interrupt for just one quick
Yeah,
second.
no, go ahead.
You know that's the thing, that life is a series of things that happen to you that suck, right?
Mhm.
And one of the things we say, okay, we want to learn how to mitigate or eliminate the suck. No, the suck is going to come. You have no control over the things that suck in your life. But if you learn to embrace that, and you say, okay, what I'm doing is I'm going to embrace this. I'm going to be mindful of this. I'm going to to sit with this, but I'm going to do this on my terms, right? That I'm going to embrace the suck, but I'm going to align my reaction to the suck with my core values. I'm going to embrace the suck, but I'm going to speak words to the suck that are aligned with my core values, and so on and so forth. And that is the key to overcoming it. But go ahead, man. I just had to
No, it's
kick
good
that in
stuff.
here.
That's good preaching. No, like here's what I mean. So there's certain things about every job that sucks. If for no other reason you have to pay taxes.
Yeah.
We're moving into that time of the year, right? Or you
Yep.
have to follow regulations, or there's just certain things that just suck about life.
Yep.
And what we tend to do, especially for procrastinators, and I have perfected the art of procrastination. I didn't just read this in a book. We focus on the pain of the immediate moment at the task at hand, and we
Damn.
lose sight of where that task is going to take us to. This is why having goals can be so important. Like, I want to get to this place, and in order to get to this place, I have to perform this task. So if I can think about, this is a tool, this is a step, this is a mechanism that's going to get me to the thing that my heart really desires and longs after. Now I'm operating in that task from the place of my heart's desire,
Right.
thinking about how it's going to get me there rather than just in the present moment. This is why I think some of that present moment now stuff doesn't work, that, sells books and invited on spiritual podcasts. But at the end of the day, if I'm just living in the now, there are some things that are in the now that just effing suck, man.
Yeah.
And so if I'm just living in the now and the future's just, not, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But if I can connect it to, this is going to get me to a better place, this is going to hand off to future Aaron what present Aaron wants. Now inspiration comes, and I'm moving into the suck from a place of congruence and love for myself and my core values, rather than just screw this. I'm gonna blow this off and I'll do this some other time because this just sucks.
Well, and that's the thing. That's why I think words are so powerful, right? Because words are the bridge from from the suck to you know to something pleasing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Somehow we have to learn how to build bridges between the now that is not our ideal and the
Yep.
future that we want to be our ideal.
Right.
And so I think that this is really key to understanding the power of words, because now what I'm doing when I speak things, I'm speaking things that are going to bridge me from this moment that I'm in that I'm not really thrilled about.
Yeah.
But what you were saying, embracing the suck, says that, okay, while I'm here, I'm going to be mindful. I'm going to look for the lessons that this may teach me.
Right.
I'm going to look for the things that are going to strengthen me here, but this is not going to be my dwelling place. So
Right.
now I'm going to build a bridge of words that get me out of this and get me into the thing that I want to be in.
Right. Sorry, I got distracted for a moment. Some
No, man.
environment. Gotta love these. It's one of the great things about not a lot of great things about 2020, but one of the great things is that people are a lot more chill in podcasts and even, even on television broadcasts and stuff, so much is done by Zoom now instead of in the or, tell this kind of format than
Yeah.
live in studio and stuff. And so people are used to environmental distractions like dogs or kids or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be.
I had that this evening.
Yeah, I imagine. Yeah, yours is a little different than mine though. But
I don't know, man. I think it's very similar.
no, I'm just saying I'm getting annoyed at what's my environment at the moment. So I kind of lost my train of thought. Sorry about that.
No, I mean, like this is what I'll say to kind of, to kind of close it out, and then I'll kick it
Sure,
back to you.
sure.
Is that that words are eminently powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Words have the ability to completely reshape our reality.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is that, do you want your reality to align with your core values? Do you want your reality to align with your true desires, your heart's what is your heart's desire? Do you want your reality to align with what you want to do for others and things like that? All of these things, and I really think that if we dedicate some time to thinking about our thoughts, the
Mm-hmm.
metacognition,
Mm-hmm.
and using what we think about our thoughts to determine what we're going to say in response to our thoughts, or if we're going to have a verbal response, because the verbal response is going to create a container, and again, we have to learn the nuance of the words that we speak so that we form the proper containers that because you can form a container and it'll be the improper container, and it'll be filled with bullshit, right?
Yeah.
But if we form the right container, it gets filled with the things that the raw material that we need to reshape our destiny, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's where I want to go and where I want to end, is that your words do have power. And here's the thing. One more thing, that when you understand your words have power, you have to make sure that you align yourself with other people
Mm-hmm.
who understand something similar.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happens is that a lot of times we will align ourselves, we'll understand the words have power. We'll understand what it takes to frame the proper containers, but then we'll align ourselves with people who don't have the same understanding, and that they're allowing their containers to be filled with bullshit. And
Yeah.
and so they wind up either negating or impeding what it is that you're trying to do. And that's why, like Aaron, I'm gonna tell you something, man, brother to brother, is that what my connection with you allows me to create containers that get filled properly.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you something. We're coming up in July. Will be 4 years we've been doing this.
Wow.
It seems like yesterday, but it's been it will be 4 years in July. And the one thing that I can say about you in these 4 years is that you have not allowed me to create containers that are filled with garbage.
Mm.
And so those, it's people like that you want in your life.
Yeah.
So it's not enough for you to understand the power of your words. You have to understand the people around you and the words that they are forming, because you don't want them to say things that are going to impede what your manifestation or your progress is.
That's
So
so
that's
true.
that's where I'll stop. So
Yeah.
I'll turn it over to you for last thoughts.
Well, thank you. I'm humbled by that, and it's been very mutually beneficial relationship.
Yep.
And I can say the same thing for you. But and you bring up such a great point. Like you can't, like, especially if you have negative self talk,
Ooh,
like you can't be in an environment where that stuff gets reinforced and reaffirmed. Like you're struggling bad, not you, but just people in general struggling bad enough to overcome their own internal dialogue. And if you're around negative, critical people all the time, people that are always going to point out, they're going to miss this. See, this is this programming, right? So
yep.
I'm going to miss the good that was done here. And I'm going to focus on the one thing that's wrong with it, or the one thing that didn't get done, or the one issue that hasn't been corrected, or the one thing that I don't like. And you live with someone like that, or you surround yourself with people like that, then you're not going to be able to create the kind of internal environment that you need
Right.
in order to create the kind of external environment that you desire.
Dude, that's it.
That's where I would that'd be my last
That
thoughts on this for the night.
so it looks like we don't have a whole lot of comments tonight,
Yeah.
but
Andre the Giant says Derrick Day for president.
not even.
I know, right?
I don't want to be president.
Oh God. Yeah, that doesn't align with any core values, right?
No, no. Let me tell you what I want to be. What I want to be is I want to be a coach, a leader of people that help them achieve their maximum potential. That's what I want.
I love that.
That's my goal. That's what I'm working toward. That's what I'm doing, and so I'm you know attached to you, to my fiance, to my sister. People who are helping me build this out. You know,
Yeah.
and that's the thing, man. I'm just I'm all about what does it take to get me to a place where I am successful enough that I can help other people experience the
Mm-hmm.
success that I experienced.
Mm-hmm.
That's it for me.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I'm trying to figure out how to monetize the change. As a coach or counselor, you get paid by the
Yep.
hour. But if you think about it, think about this. Those of you that are in counseling, and I'm a counselor, the moment you get better, your counselor quits getting paid.
Well, and let me tell you, what my thoughts are on this. Right? See, I don't want anybody to become dependent upon me.
Right.
I
I
want
don't
to give them what they need to get escape velocity beyond me. Right? So, but there are always going to be people who need what you and I have to give.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we get monetized. That's where we get
Yeah,
compensated.
I'm just saying the value of what I know I bring as a coach, counselor, whatever capacity I'm in. I honestly can say, and this may sound conceited to people, but I don't care. If you know me, you know I'm not conceited. But the change can be so powerful, is so valuable that the compensation for the time that it takes to create that change or help that person create that change, there's they don't match.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yep,
So
yep.
when I say monetize the change, I'm like, how is there a fair value exchange in what transpires in those
You know what,
experiences with people?
brother? I think that with each one of these episodes that we do, I think we get a little bit closer to that. We get a little bit closer to understanding that because let me tell you something. Everybody that's listening, that if you want to help yourself get free of spiritual bondage, to get an understanding of what a truly mystical and metaphysical life looks like, Aaron's your guy. You know, watch his shows, watch his videos, listen to what he says, and more than that, connect with him on a one-on-one basis and let him share what he's doing to help you grow. Because I'm going to say this just in all honesty, I've gotten a whole lot from you free of charge,
Mm-hmm.
and it has benefited me. Right now, this moment, I'm living my best life, and I owe a debt of gratitude to you for that.
Yeah, the value exchange there though is your friendship,
Yep.
So I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate the shout out. But I just been this is more like after talk. This is how Derrick and Aaron talk after. But I've just been thinking about that this week because I had some really significant breakthroughs with several people this week, and I just thought, dang, like
Well,
this is
call me after the show because I can't wait to hear about it.
all right. Sounds good. Everybody, peace and hair grease. Thanks for coming to our TED Talks. I think we got about 4 or 5 of them in, and I hope
Yep.
like myself in this episode and Derrick, I think I can speak for you in this episode.
Yep.
I hope you were growing in real time.
Yep. Yep. Thanks for growing in real time with us, y'all.
Love it.
All right. Talk to you later, bro.
All right, later.